It's my pleasure to be here today, and thank you to HCL for putting together a great event. So I want to talk a little bit about the next wave of globalization. We call it Globalization X. And it's a little bit different than, I think, what some of my fellow panel members have been chatting about. So I think you might be able to look at this from a slightly different perspective. The question is, how are buyers and governments actually driving economic development and globalization through outsourcing? So what we see since, I would say, the early 1990s is we see a heavy prevalence of staff augmentation, and that's pretty much how our industry was defined. And that turned into some low-value outsourcing, offshoring, some high-value offshoring eventually in 2000, IT outsourcing, business process outsourcing, multi-sourcing, transformational sourcing, and something now that we call right sourcing. And some of my employees, when I make them work on the weekend, call it wrong sourcing. But what we see going forward now is something a little bit different. It's not the end of sourcing. Rather, it's what we call Globalization X, which is the next wave. A little bit about our company. Avasant focuses really in three primary areas: sourcing advisory, globalization advisory, and technology optimization and strategy. We're not a service provider. We are a management consultancy, and that's our primary role. So getting back to the point, globalization. Globalization X goes beyond labor arbitrage and cost reduction. Today, when organizations look to outsource or to build a captive somewhere or to move into a new region, it's oftentimes for a myriad of reasons. It's to balance risk. It's to penetrate into new markets. It's to create innovation through skills development in new markets. And of course, take advantage of public and private incentives. What do we mean by public and private incentives? Depending upon the region that you might be in, there could be special tax advantages. There might be even access to facilities at a lower cost or government subsidies. So when organizations today are looking to outsource, they're also looking to globalize. They're looking for their partners, their outsourcing partners, to help them achieve and enter into new markets. And that's why we call this next generation Globalization X. We are looking actually at a new paradigm in the way organizations look at sourcing. And so the question of sourcing generally is, we've looked at it historically, has been we're outsourcing to somewhere, to a company, we're outsourcing to a region. Today's global organizations are just as comfortable outsourcing back from China to the United States as from the United States to Latin America or to Europe. So this notion of sourcing is strange in a global transboundary and boundless environment. So as we drive forward, it's all about market opportunity. We've gone beyond Globalization 1.0, which we refer to as cost arbitrage, to Globalization 2.0, which is cost arbitrage as well as skills availability, and then Globalization X, which adds the market access component, right? The exciting thing. We're not just going to India because we want lower cost. We want access to the market. We want to sell our products and services there. What is the opportunity? Just look at China, India, and Africa, and this is really for the next millennium. Comprises 22% of the world GDP and 52% of the world population. This is where there is significant amount of opportunity. And I laugh whenever I hear our friends in the industry saying, oh, well, we're just looking downward in the United States. Things are looking very bad. I tell them, why don't you go take a look at Europe? Things can be worse. That was supposed to be a joke. There must be a lot of Europeans in the audience today. But there is a significant opportunity in front of us. And for most organizations and CIOs, if we're thinking along the lines of innovation, and not just along the lines of IT service provisioning, then we're going to be able to drive our organizations to take advantage through technology-enabled solutions of these new regions, right? So what about the other emerging nations and countries? When we look at globalization, we're also looking at emerging markets. And Avasant has a significant presence in Latin America, Africa, in China. In Africa, we support multiple countries as well, including Uganda, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. What are we doing in Africa, for example? Well, we're helping these countries drive foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment in the form of skills training, in the form of potentially creating new outsourcing destinations. So buyers today increasingly have more options, and they should be driving their partners to these new destinations to the extent it makes economical and business sense to do so. And again, this slide speaks a little bit more about what I was talking about, how buyers are really driving this skill set. I just came back from China about 4 months ago, and I was giving a presentation in Wuhan. And we had done some research, and so I'd actually just seen the slides about an hour before, and I was trying to make heads or tails of it, and I couldn't even believe what our own analysts were showing me. The average salary of the BPO analyst in China was ranging between $4,000 and $6,000 a year. It just shocked me, okay? And interesting, even more interesting than that was the amount of expertise and experience they had. So while China has been a destination of concern and fear because of data protection and security issues and concerns for Westerners, they will find a way to make that, and they are finding ways to make that skill set, that population, and that wage opportunity available to global markets. And so we have to be ready for that. And they will. I'll tell you, they're doing an excellent job every single time we go there to demonstrate more interest and more focus on global markets. When we look at Globalization X, what is really making it all possible? Well, in countries throughout Latin America, or as I mentioned, even in Africa, the key impetus is infrastructure, power, access to network connectivity. And with new investments in this regard, it is opening up these previously unobtainable locations to become new emerging destinations for sourcing. There's also a significant amount of government investment. The World Bank is expecting almost $70 billion of development funds in this space just to the African continent. So this creates a real positive spiral. Development funds, service providers making investments, and skills training. This is Globalization X, an opportunity to drive into new markets. And there's some other good benefits as well. Through globalization, we're seeing reduced global unemployment in emerging nations. We're seeing an increased pool of trained and educated resources, improved green initiatives, both indirect job growth as well as a result of bringing new jobs to these locations, and an improved global standard of living. So while we might be seeing some global rebalancing, as we call it, in the 21st century, we're also seeing an opportunity again for creating some better standard of living for many of these emerging nations. I'll give you an interesting case study. This is one which Avasant has been working on and through our foundation. So actually today I chose not to give any sourcing advisory case studies because I thought this might be a little different. So one of the things that we're working on with the Rockefeller Foundation is we're doing something called impact sourcing. And impact sourcing is designed specifically to skill and train those individuals throughout the emerging nations that actually have no training whatsoever, okay? The poorest of the poor. And the opportunity is quite amazing. There is a potential of employing, as we call them, socioeconomically disadvantaged people in BPO centers. It has the potential to reach 20 billion and employ 780,000 jobs. Quite amazing. Quite amazing. So globalization, as we see it today, pushed forward by sourcing, is having some dramatic effects in the global marketplace. And finally, globalization is also, particularly Globalization X, it's a new way of doing business for all of us. It's worth mentioning some of these key facts. 294 billion emails sent every day. 800,000 petabytes of digital information created in 2009, with 1.2 million in 2010. 1 billion videos watched on YouTube in 2009, with 2 billion expected in 2010. More e-books than physical books sold in the Christmas of 2010. Enterprise mobile apps to grow to 78 million by 2013, and 450 billion transactions on the internet daily. This is a new way of doing business. We can't go backwards, and there is an opportunity for all organizations in Globalization X. Thank you.